The Black Ship side story, what's the job? Chapter 10. I beg your pardon? Asked Ibrahim Gimor, head of House Gimor. He turned to face the holographic display of a kneeling Ukem Errante, his peridot green eyes focused on the man displayed on it. His tall, strong, and healthy physique tensed as he frowned and ran a hand through his short, perfectly trimmed brown hair. Despite his years, he looked no older than 40. I don't think I can be hearing this right. Lord Ukem Errante gritted his teeth just a little harder as he bowed his head deeper, trying and failing to explain the events that befell the Staples. After several seconds of pointless stuttering, his lord pressed on. In fact, I know I can't be hearing this right. This level of insolence goes beyond a mere feud. Such blatant disregard for proper diplomatic channels and spitting on the long-standing traditions of mutual respect and cordiality doesn't happen in any system held, protected, and belonging to House Gimor. His eyes narrowed like the claws of a predator ready to sink into its prey's flesh. You're telling me that a viscount under my house's protection and patronage, one of my bannermen, has failed to protect the family of a fellow noble? A noble close to the second princess of the principality, no less. He paused, clearing his throat, masterfully keeping his temper under control above all else. Furthermore, as part of this failure, you allowed the perpetrators to get away, and an agent representing House Astor has perished in consequence of the lack of support from absolutely any security forces of any kind under your control? Ibrahim eyed his vassal with barely contained fury. My lord, Ukem started, bowing his head a little lower. Lord Staples had declared his intention to adopt his family mere weeks prior, and we had only just discovered who that family actually was. Numerous charlatans sprang up, further exacerbating and straining our efforts. Ibrahim took a step forward, silencing his vassal. I care not for excuses, Ukem. You have failed. Do you believe me blind as to not see through your machinations to put your house in the princess's favor? Yet the family of Baron Staples was taken. What have you to say for yourself? It is not an excuse, my lord. Yes, they were taken by unknowns, but we are not completely convinced there was a third party, no matter how much the Tigan prisoners want to wail about it. I found out afterward that we don't have any records of any other party making landfall on Volantis. The only other notable arrival was of a ship hailing from outside the principality. Merchants and traders at our best estimate. As such, I'm of the opinion it was Tigan operatives who had managed to escape with the Staples while my honor guard apprehended the Tigans before they themselves could get off-world. A carefully planned ploy, he finished, sounding both winded and nervous all at once. And what efforts have been made to recover them? Lord Gimor nearly shouted, his green eyes glaring at the much wider man. Even through the holographic projection, Ukem could practically feel his liege spitting on him with disdain. My honor guard was dispatched to capture the Tigans, who we believed would have had the family with them. I then sent them to the Staples home when that proved to be false, but the family had already been taken. At this point, Ukem was really beginning to feel his stomach twist in knots, as every action he took to defend himself was resulting in failure anyway. My guard caught up with and recovered one of my auxilia who had been working with the agent to prevent their kidnapping. Sergeant Warlow Pincer has provided us with a little information, such as the ship used to take the family away was a Corvette-class ship, but not much else. Beyond that, I had my Void patrols attempt to intercept the vessel which had seized the Staples, but the ship managed to slip the noose before we could tighten it. It disappeared into the void, away from my grasp. By now, it is highly unlikely that they remain in system. Only once he had finished did the man regret using the word noose in this particular conversation. I see, Ibrahim replied in a whisper, his tone ringing ominously. And tell me again, why did you think it necessary to execute one of only 8 prisoners you had, which we could use as a means to recover Lord Staples' relations? At this point, Ukem got to his feet, standing taller, regaining a little bit of his usual confidence. Multiple reasons, my liege. First, it shows we're taking this seriously and not afraid to execute proven disgraceful sons and daughters, members of a great house, who flagrantly not only break rules of neutrality, but who come like thieves and delinquents in the night with false premises. They have disrespected not only the authority of my house, but they dare spit on the face of every other noble on Volantis, your subjects, and most importantly, upon your house's honor, Lord Ibrahim. I've done nothing more than punish them for their trespassing on our neutrality in the first place. And why her specifically? It was an attempt at mercy. But a message needed to be sent, my lord. She wasn't near the position of heiress apparent. House Tygan will be reminded that they need to play ball at the cost of one of their lower members. A bargain, I say. After that, the rest were much more talkative, and my hand was only forced to inflict pain twice without the need to take another life. Ibrahim sighed deeply while pinching the bridge of his nose as he fought to restrain himself. At the very least, Ukum, I can't fault you for that much. Returning his gaze to his Viscount, he asked, And you said that Tamarin Caiston put the young Tygans up to this? Ukem nodded. Cervante Tygan confessed that Marquise Tamirin Caiston approached them during a festive banquet event. She made it clear, however, that they had never received any order or promise of reward. They acted on their own accord, believing that they would be somehow praised by Duke Draymore to some capacity. Every other Tygan confirmed her tale. So that silver-tongued charlatan spoke his poison and they drank it without realizing. Ibrahim let out a tired groan. Has any of this been reported to the prince yet? No, my liege, Ukum stated, internally grateful that his patron's fury had been directed elsewhere. I came to you first to make sure we had a plan before moving forward with informing the prince. Good! Send me any and all information you have on the matter. Reports, sensor scans, autopsy reports on the agent, interviews with your sergeant, and the interrogation you had with the Tygans. Everything, no matter how trivial or insignificant. I'll need as much as I can if we are to get away without punishment, he finished in a calmer tone. This includes the remaining Tygans. Of course, my liege. Right away. But what about Baron Staples? Should I report on the condition of his family to him? Or do you wish to handle it differently? Ukum asked with a curious expression. No, Gimor said sternly. Do not report anything to Baron Staples. The prince must be informed first, and we don't know what the newly minted lord's current assignment is. So we will let the prince decide what is the most prudent course of action to be taken. Very good, my liege. As you wish. Lord Ukum bowed low before cutting off the transmission and sending the requested data over. For several moments, Ibrahim didn't move or say anything. He simply stood in the middle of his private study, surrounded by his favorite trinkets and collections as he processed the information he'd just acquired. It started with a soft groan before he walked slowly and deliberately behind his masterfully crafted antique desk. He sat on his chair and tapped on its surface for several long, silent minutes, thinking about what he was going to do next. So, Lord Gimor said quietly to himself as he leaned back in his chair, Draymore forces want to break the neutrality and push my house in the firing line, do they? They believe House Guymore to be so weak that those under Duke Cornelius believe I won't respond? His eyes shimmered as he sent out multiple orders to different people. Well, two can play at that game, he growled. Matcha. Hours later at Matcha, the prince collapsed in his chair in front of his council members, causing several to rise out of concern. My prince? Juliana called as she closed the distance and was by his side instantly. Are you injured? Having just gotten word about what befell Wyatt's family, the prince shook his head in disbelief. How can this be possible? He stammered, ignoring the question. However, when his query was met with silence, it only served to make him more distraught. How is this possible, Lord Gimor? There was an uncomfortable silence in the room as everyone resumed their seats, and Ibrahim Grimoire appeared in a holographic projection. Every council member shared questioning stares and linked together to share their surprise and distress in private. Lord Ibrahim, for his part, was suddenly disarmed as he found himself the center of attention without warning. However, he composed himself quickly. My prince, I assure you, he started, but just as quickly cut off. Commander Juliana, did you not send an agent to Volantis to assess the situation surrounding the family since they did not have the resources like the rest of our houses to protect themselves yet? The prince demanded, refocusing to find a solution. Or at the very least answers. The question of how he was going to inform the one who had saved his sister's life that he couldn't keep his trusted Knight Banneret's family safe was now looming in his troubled mind. "Yes, my prince." "As you requested," she answered with a slight tilt of her head, wondering why her friend and liege was speaking of the matter so publicly. "I even dispatched nearby reinforcements to secure the area and a team to pull the family out when my agent reported growing disturbances. This was requested because my agent wasn't able to rule out House Arante as part of a suspected plot against the assets at the time," she finished, turning a curious glance at Ibrahim Gimor as a growing dread manifested itself in her chest. "Your Majesty," Ibrahim tried again, "I assure you, my house's vassal, House Arante, the governing house of Volantis, did everything in their power with what information they had at their disposal. At no moment did Lord Ucam Arante attempt to get in the way of the dispatched agent. Please, my prince, accept this data packet I am sending you. It points out all that was done to try and prevent this. It took a few moments, but once the data had been scrubbed for any malicious content, the prince and his council all absorbed it into their minds in an instant." His violet eyes soon narrowed dangerously as he tried to process many conflicting emotions at once. Marchioness Amelia Finnegan, seeing the hesitation, now spoke up. "From what I can tell, the only elements actually involved in their physical defense were the agent Lady Juliana sent and a voluntary yet elderly auxilia sergeant. Everything else was too little, too late. Is this not so?" "It is as you say, Marchioness Amelia. Technically, you could say it that way," Ibrahim offered nervously. "Forgive me, Lord Ibrahim," George Lintar began to probe curiously. "But to some, it might even look as though you and Lord Arante aren't necessarily acting as neutral as your stance would seem to indicate. Why, this incident is far too convenient, wouldn't you agree?" The prince was now beginning to look more contemplative, more focused after the comment. His gaze shifted from George back to Ibrahim, eyebrows raised, as he tried to keep an open mind. "No, Lord Lintar," Ibrahim countered strongly, sounding offended. "You insult me and my house with such presumptions. Neither I nor my house has had a hand in these disgraceful machinations." "Oh, no?" George asked with a smile, even though the fact that he was about to defend that lowly commoner with airs of grandeur, Wyatt Staples or his family, made him queasy inwardly. "As I understand it, your territory sits right in between House Caiston and House Tygan. Then suddenly we have a plot set in motion by both houses to kidnap our loyal Baron Staples' relatives. Relatives, might I add, embraced by that same Baron not too long ago, into his house as honored servants given their low birth. Quite a coincidence that all of yours and Lord Arante's forces were missing until it's just too late to do anything useful about it. One couldn't be faulted for suspecting collusion had a play in this messy event." The prince held out his hands, calming the tension in the room before it could truly settle in. Now. Settle down, Commander Lintar. We've received the same information. Such dealings are unbecoming of House Gimor. It has always been loyal and reliable in the past. Surely there is something he can show to prove this really is a misunderstanding and make House Gimor's and that of its vassals unquestionable." "Indeed there is, Your Majesty," Ibrahim said firmly, puffing his chest out a bit. "House Caiston and House Tygan have attacked House Gimor through our vassal, House Arante, with this egregious breach of protocol. Not only that, they have insulted us, assuming my house will not retaliate against their flagrant aggressions. We will not stand to have our honor disgraced in such a way. This is why I've personally sought to inform Your Majesty of the situation as quickly as possible. I have also sent out scouts in an attempt to pick up the trail of the perpetrators. And to further prove my innocence in this plot, cleansing away any doubts that may arise questioning the honor of House Gimor, I, Marquis Ibrahim Gimor, head of House Gimor, hereby pledge my fealty to you, my prince. House Gimor, as well as vassal houses, will no longer sit by in neutrality and watch as turmoil, chaos, and depravity sweep across our beloved principality. You are our prince, and we denounce the proclamations of both Duke Corenlius Draymore and Duchess Sylvia Emerald to claim the position of Lord Regent. If this is how they and their allies view the rules of nobility, showcasing no respect whatsoever, demonstrating that they have no honor themselves, and whose words hold no more merit than a veiled lie, then we shall stand side by side with you to oppose them." "Not only this," he said, standing proudly and placing a hand to his chest. By way of something tangible as a show of good faith in my pledge, I am hereby transferring the prisoners from House Tigan to your Majesty's custody immediately. The room erupted in whispered reactions, as there was scant an ear in the chamber that could believe what they were hearing. The prince soon held his hand up once more to quiet the ruckus. My lord Ibrahim Gimor, I must admit, this is an unexpected but welcome turn of events. I trust you understand what this means for you and your house, the prince asked pointedly. Yes, my prince. I do. Let all know we stand by the honorable and true ruler of the principality, and that we will not be taken advantage of by those that would seek to destroy you, Ibrahim reinforced strongly. The young prince paused as he looked to the council members around him. If this is how you wish to prove your innocence, then so it shall be. Does anyone object? He asked, offering his counselors and their factions the opportunity to voice further concerns, but none spoke for several seconds. Admiral Damian Valto, ever the reliable man that he was, cleared his throat to speak, breaking the silence as eyes shifted to his screen. To speak such fervent words is no small feat, my prince. I, for one, would always welcome more support. However, if I may ask, do you mean to announce this decision publicly? Or are you swearing loyalty secretly, Marquis? Of course I will announce our intentions publicly, Ibrahim said with a small smile. Glory belongs to the intrepid, he announced, boldly declaring his house's motto. I shall have my servants and staff make preparations immediately. You should expect a formal declaration later this evening. Very well, Lord Ibrahim, the prince said after another moment's contemplation. He paused for just long enough to give anyone else the chance to speak. Glances were exchanged, but none carried disapproval. If this is your final decision, we shall also make preparations to integrate you and your house into the effort to maintain justice and order. You shall hear from us soon. Loyalty is its own reward. Loyalty is its own reward, everyone answered loudly. As the connection with Lord Gimor disappeared, Juliana Winfield sported a small smile and leaned over to look at George Lintar. Why, George, you surprised me. I had no idea you felt such a strong sense of duty to Lord Staples and his family. George scoffed. The simple fact of the matter was he had no love for that upstart. Regardless, such an opportunity couldn't be allowed to pass him by. He would be more than happy to hear Wyatt and his rabble family perish wholesale. But if it meant bringing in another great house to their side, then he'd stand to defend them for the moment. Please. I still feel his appointment was ill-advised, and the prince lavishes him with too much praise and reward. With all due respect, my prince, that doesn't mean I can't take advantage of an opportunity to improve our situation. Does it? He fired back with a small wry grin. If he had to tolerate the upstart commoner, he might as well make use of him, George thought very quietly to himself. Indeed it does not, Lukacs Ishtal said, hiding a smirk. The prince let out a long, tired sigh. Very good, everyone. Let's adjourn for now. It appears we have much work to do to integrate our new allies. Dismissed. As the group bowed and began to break up, he turned toward Lady Winfield. Juliana, please stay. I have more matters I wish to discuss with you privately. As the council broke up and the room emptied, Juliana tilted her head curiously at the prince. Yes, my prince? The man rubbed his temples tiredly. I should be ecstatic. We have just added another great house to our list of allies. And yet, it comes at the cost of Wyatt's family, she finished. The prince merely nodded at first. The last time we spoke on this topic, I was trying to think of a way to properly thank a man who had saved my most beloved sister. And instead, I now get to inform him that I was not able to protect his family in turn. A scoff escaped his lips. Is that the kind of reward loyalty to me is to be expected by my most loyal subjects? The prince asked with a sad smile. Juliana raised an eyebrow. The measures we took were preemptive, but not enough, this I admit. There was never any indication that they were in immediate danger. I do believe you are being just a little bit overly harsh on yourself. Am I? He asked, rising from his chair. I can't even tell him for certain who took his family. Whether it was a partially failed Tigan operation, some further cased employ we've yet to uncover, or some random third party blindsiding us all. I fear this may very well end up destroying a promising knight banneret and his nascent house before it can stand. Will he remain loyal? Will he, justifiably so, break away? Juliana hummed softly. I believe Wyatt will understand and only blame those who actually committed the offense. Has he not proclaimed to hate only Serhan Gimor and not the entire house? He knows how to channel his hatred into a singular objective. The prince pondered for a moment, then nodded. Perhaps. But what do we do about it in the meantime? There is not much that can be done for the time being. The only thing we know is that they were taken by capable foes in a military vessel of unknown design. Certainly not a black ship, Juliana replied. The prince frowned. Begin an investigation. I want your best agents on this. Give them whatever support they need. I clearly underestimated the potential threat level before, and it won't happen again. I can't have my warriors believing their families are not safe while they are away fighting for me. As my prince commands. And keep it quiet, he ordered, looking heavenward as if for strength. You may ask Marchioness Amelia for assistance if need be, but nobody else. The likes of George Lintar would still disapprove of so many resources being allocated for this despite everything. And I don't need his voice, less so of his faction, bringing down morale when we have finally had such a fortuitous stroke of luck on the political front. As you wish, she said, tilting her head in acknowledgement. They stood in each other's company for a few long and silent seconds, before the prince turned to her once more. Do you think I should inform him personally? Or should I send a message to Clara and let her inform Wyatt? Her brow furrowed in thought. It might come out better through Clara as she spends more time with him and knows him better. But the message coming directly from you would leave no doubts in his mind that we have not abandoned his family to their luck, I think. He bobbed his head lightly in understanding. I believe I will think about it a little more. But thank you for your counsel as always, Juliana, the prince finished with a warm smile. Juliana cast him an easy, pleasant smile as well before bowing respectfully. I am always here to assist, my prince. As she left him alone with his thoughts, the prince walked back to his room, cloaked royal marines ensuring he'd be safe from any threat. He paced back and forth before eventually coming to a stop at the chessboard he had set up for himself. Grabbing the black knight, he stared at it and rolled it in his hands for a long while before finally placing it beside the king's piece. He let out a long, heavy sigh as he activated the QEC device to contact the Noir Navio and speak to his knight banneret. On board the Noir Navio. Cynthia and Wyatt were in the training room, practicing privately so Wyatt could pick her mind about his composters. So what you're saying is, they're getting better? Wyatt finished with a pained grunt as he was dropped to the floor for the 12th time that session. I said they're not as terrible as I expected them to be at this point, Cynthia remarked while brandishing a small smile as she pulled back from her opponent. Again. Wyatt managed to smirk despite himself as he picked himself up off the floor. And that is practically gushing with praise coming from you, he teased as he started another series of jabs and strikes. She narrowed her eyes but kept her smile as she parried his strikes with ease. You make me sound so heartless. Bloodrend? A crack of his spine as he was suddenly folded over from a counterattack left him groaning. What was that? Did you say something? She mocked. No! He choked and coughed, happy to stay on the floor a little longer this time. No, not a thing. Cynthia offered a hand to help him up when her smile instantly vanished in response to an urgent order from Clara. It looks like our training is done for the day. Yes. It actually sounded serious, too. I hope everything is fine, Wyatt said as he took the offered hand after receiving the same message to present themselves before her immediately. It didn't take the pair long to make it to Clara's quarters. When they entered, they were greeted by the sight of Clara speaking to a holographic projection of the prince. Both immediately bowed and remained silent until spoken to. Noticing their arrival, the prince nods. Ah, Wyatt, please come closer. Clara gave a slight tilt of her head toward her brother as she backed away to give Wyatt room. Wyatt frowned, suddenly feeling incredibly uneasy. This is it, he thought to himself. I've finally done something to upset some self-righteous blue blood somewhere that can't be covered up or justified. His mind raced over all the possibilities that could be, but for the life of him, he couldn't actually think of anything memorable this time. The last month and a half had been remarkably uneventful beyond the shipment loads worth of work his new barony needed. And as far as he could tell, everyone had been getting along rather well. The battle against Raven Tomb had ended not long ago. Had some petty noble complained that their villa was destroyed? What was this about? Trying to sound as normal as possible, he said, "Greetings, my liege," even as he stood as rigid as a steel pole. His thoughts were checked when it appeared as though the prince was having a hard time speaking. Now Wyatt was truly lost. "Baron Wyatt Staples, my knight banneret." The prince hesitated, clearing his throat. An action that drew worried sideward glances from Clara and Cynthia. "I'm afraid I am the bearer of terrible news. I could have had someone else deliver what I'm about to tell you. However, given the nature of the incident, I decided that this burden is mine alone to carry." He paused, finding Wyatt's heterochromatic eyes. "We just received a report that 2 days ago your family was kidnapped from Volantis," he said with an obviously heavy heart. Wyatt was stunned, his mouth slightly falling agape as the words slowly sank in. Of all the possibilities that ran through his mind, people kidnapping his family was not one of them. After several seconds of silence, the prince continued, "I wish to apologize personally for—" "Who?" Wyatt interrupted without even thinking. A fact that even made Clara and Cynthia flinch and grimace. The prince was momentarily taken aback by the shockingly rude breach of protocol, even as he was trying to be supportive. But as he studied his face and saw Wyatt's stunned expression slowly warp and contort into something that began to make the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, he decided to simply let it go this time. Remembering, too, he was still very new to his position, as well as being understandably distraught at the news. "We don't know for sure. Current information lays blame on House Tygan with possible support from House Caiston." Wyatt's eyes narrowed dangerously, considering they had just released Casimir Caiston back to his family not 2 months prior. He continued to listen quietly. "But again, it's not certain. We do know the Tygans were there to kidnap your family, but they were captured by House Arante. During the interrogation, it was discovered that there may be another unknown party involved. Whether that was just the Tygans trying to deflect responsibility or the truth, we're still investigating," the prince stressed. Wyatt nodded as he balled his hands into tightened fists. "I did this," he said with finality. "This is my fault. I put them in danger. If I had just rejected them, they would have stayed as they always were. Ignored. Safe." The prince shook his head. "No. You embraced your family discreetly, so only a few noticed. The Tygans' arrival and their travel time indicate they left for Volantis days prior to your proclamation. Most nobles and houses outside of Volantis were still trying to figure out who your family even was when this took place. They were always a target, much to my increasing dismay and shame." He sighed tiredly. "I am truly sorry. I had ordered an agent to go to Volantis to protect them, yet the agent died in the line of duty. It also seems a family friend of yours tried to help. A Sergeant Warlow Pincer." This caught Wyatt's attention. "Is he safe?" The prince nodded. "Indeed. Minor injuries in the altercation to save them before they were taken off-world. But nothing even remotely debilitating." Wyatt seemed to be comforted by that news at least, but quickly fell back into his own thoughts. "Still, I'm ashamed to say I underestimated the threat overall. I hope you can accept my apology. And know I'm doing everything I can to aid in their recovery," the prince said most sincerely. When no response came, he tilted his head curiously. "Wyatt!" The sound of his name shook Wyatt again from his thoughts, moving him to refocus on his liege. "Of course, my prince. I accept your apology." His words, however, carried an almost mechanical or hollow tone to them, as if he were simply going through rehearsed responses. Clara and Cynthia exchanged a nervous glance. They hadn't heard him use that tone since the incident at Balakura. It felt unnatural to hear it again. "I know this is easier said than done, but try not to make yourself too uneasy. I am devoting a lot of resources to this, and in the end, The more than likely event is that they will be ransomed back soon. And if it comes down to ransom, I will handle that personally, the prince tried to reassure. So try to stay focused. They're not lost. Yet, Wyatt added in his mind. Thank you, Your Majesty. And thank you for delivering the news yourself, Wyatt said with a bow. The prince went to say something, but ended up simply returning the bow. Very well. We'll speak again soon. Wyatt snapped off a crisp salute, spun around, and marched out of the room without another word. As the door closed behind him, the trio left in the room stared at each other silently. Outside, Wyatt quietly made his way to the practice range after stopping off in his quarters for his soul snatchers.
Hello everyone, Viper here. I hope you're enjoying What's the Job as much as I did writing it. Please consider supporting me personally on my Ko-Fi page. The link is in the description below. Thank you all again. The next chapter will be out soon.